In this video, we're going to be going over osmosis and its connection to simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. If you're ever asked the question, how does water move across a cell membrane? The answer is going to be osmosis. But remember, osmosis is just the overall process of the diffusion of water across a membrane. And we give it that term, osmosis. So we have diffusion, but if we're talking specifically about diffusion of water through a membrane, we call that osmosis. It's going from an area of higher water concentration to an area of lower water concentration. But if you really get down to it, well, what kind of diffusion is this osmosis? Well, it involves simple diffusion, and in certain cells, it can be facilitated diffusion. We just give it this term osmosis to cover both of those, simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion of water across the membrane. Let's take a look at simple diffusion. Water is a small polar molecule that can move slowly through the phospholipid bilayer by simple diffusion, and it's following its osmotic gradient, meaning it's going to go from a high water concentration to an area of lower water concentration through the semipermeable membrane. The slowness, or the impedance, is due to the hydrophobic or nonpolar tails of this phospholipid bilayer. The center part, remember, has these lipids, and that's going to hinder the movement of water, but it's not going to prevent its movement. So water will go through the membrane because it's a very small molecule. It's just that phospholipid bilayer can impede the movement of water into the cell or out of the cell, depending on the osmotic concentration gradient. And looking at facilitated diffusion, certain cells, like those that we find in the kidneys, the kidney tubules, are going to have what we call these transmembrane water channels. And these are called aquaporins. And aquaporins are these protein pores that allow water to move from an area of high water concentration to an area of lower water concentration, going down its osmotic gradient, either into the cell or out of the cell. But they're using aquaporins, which means that these aquaporins are acting in facilitated diffusion to move that water. These aquaporins allow water to move more easily and quickly than they would if they only had simple diffusion. We're going to talk a lot about these when we get to the kidney. We're going to talk about the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus make a hormone called anti-diuretic hormone that gets released by the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Anti-diuretic hormone is going to go to the kidney tubules, specifically the collecting ducts and the distal part of the distal convoluted tubule, where they're going to stimulate, here's ADH, and it's going to come in and stimulate these vesicles that contain aquaporins to be placed into the membrane to allow water to move through these aquaporins into the cell and then into the blood. So anti-diuretic hormone is going to cause you to urinate less because you're reabsorbing more water from the filtrate of the kidneys. And aquaporins facilitate this movement. But these two processes of simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion are part of the bigger process of osmosis. So you want to make sure on the test you're asked how water moves across the membrane, it's osmosis. But remember, osmosis is a specific type of diffusion through the membrane that pertains only to water. Let's test your knowledge. Go ahead and pause the video and answer these two questions. And on the second question, you really want to elaborate on the mechanisms of simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and their connection with osmosis. Here are the answers. And if you have any questions, please let me know.